everyone, it's Leanne with Lovely Scrappin', and I'm here with another completed canvas collage. This one here is an 11 by 11 canvas collage, and it's about 1.5 inches thick, so it's one of the deep ones. And it actually ended up starting, it was just like a painting I got at my one of my dollar stores, and I bought it for the canvas specifically because I knew I was going to just paint over top of it and do a collage over top of it, because they didn't have the size of canvas I wanted. They were sold out, so I just bought that one. So, and you'll see that in my start to finish, you guys. I did do a start to finish video on this, and I chose to go with a lot softer colors, very light, as opposed to my other dark canvas collages. So this is more shabby chic, very soft pastel baby colors. And the paper collection that inspired me to do this collage was the My Mind's Eye Be Happy collection. And so I pulled out the colors, the idea of having music notes sheets, which you're going to again see in the start to finish. There's doilies in there. You know, I used lots of fun of the honeycomb shape, chicken wire shape, and I kind of took those little ideas like the polka dot, you know, and just kind of got my idea to do like what type of texturing I would do with the polka dot, the ledger, and the chicken wire texturing and all that stuff. So that's where I got my inspiration, you guys. I usually love to pull, when I'm using one paper line, I'll usually look through it, especially if it has like Graphic 45, for instance, all of the designs in it. I'll really sit down and I'll look at the paper and study it and just pull out ideas from the paper line itself to come up with my design. And of course the design, the whole idea for canvas collage was initially inspired by Finnabair, and also known as Anna Dabrowska. Most of you probably know who she is, amazing designer for Prima, Prima educator, and does classes on these and everything. So of course my whole inspiration for all the canvas collages I've ever done have come from her, but you guys probably already know that because I say it a million times. But anyway, so that's where I got the inspiration to do what I was pulling into here to make this collage. A lot of you asked, do I start out with a sketch? Do I just go with the flow? And the answer is, well, I do both. But for this one in particular, I just happened to be, I got gesso on my hand, sorry. This one in particular, I just happened to be thinking about what I wanted to do, and I did do a sketch. So this is my wonderful rough sketch, but you can kind of see how what I was doing, what I was thinking about initially ended up coming, you know, into this collage. So, you know, like having the little banners and the tags, you know, I did end up doing that, a little bit different looking, but the idea of polka dots and chicken wire and, you know, stuff like that, and the sprays coming up the sides and the bird cage and the big flowers and floral collage and everything. So that is my initial sketch. And what I first started doing was writing down ideas. So like I wanted to do a collage, music notes, and I just wrote down a list of the things, like some embellishments I wanted to incorporate as I was studying the paper line. And then I also wrote down colors, you know, the different types of colors I thought I'd want to use for the Lindy sprays. So that is where my initial thought process came from for this collage. So I know a lot of you ask, but you guys, I also just sometimes fly by the seat of my pants. I'll just start laying things down and creating things as I go. My designs always change by the end, as it did again in this case. So that's kind of what happened with this one. I did want to let you know I used homemade texture paste. For a lot of you who have seen my recent video on my homemade texture paste using the baby powder and the Mod Podge and gesso, this one here. That recipe that I gave in that tutorial is what I used for this collage. I really wanted to test it out, and it took on the sprays beautifully. So a lot of you were asking, you know, let us know how it takes on the sprays when I test it out. And as you can see, I mean, it picks up the sprays beautifully, and I also touched it with gesso afterwards to highlight some lighter tones in here. So it worked very well. The texture is amazing. I love it. So, I mean, you can see all the texture along the sides. It was awesome. Love it, love it. So anyways, again, you'll see me using that in my start to finish. And all the colors, all the spraying was Lindy Stamp Gang, and I'll mention the colors I use when I do my voiceover for the start to finish as well. So anyways, you guys, super, super happy. Some things like the creation of this bird cage, I lost a bit of footage because I was continuing to create it and my memory card was full and I didn't realize it until after I was pretty much done. So there is some clips of me creating some things and you might notice, oh, okay, that kind of got skipped through. It's because I lost footage. Okay, you guys, so here is my project. I really hope the person I made this for likes it, and I hope you enjoy the start to finish. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll do my best to describe the colors and products that I use, like the dyes and the stencils and such, in my voiceover. So please watch the full video to get all those details of the products used. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye. So I'm starting with my canvas here, and so I need to put at least 3 coats of gesso to completely cover this image. Again, it's much easier if you have just a blank canvas and you won't have to do this. You'll skip this step completely, but anywho, so that's what it looks like with the 3 coats of gesso on it. I've primed it. It's all ready to go. Now I'm taking some vintage music note sheet that I had in my stash, and I'm just ripping it up in some random pieces in different lengths, and I'm just sort of staggering it over top of the canvas to figure out exactly where I want it, and then I'm just going to adhere it down with some Mod Podge matte. And this canvas is 11 inches by 11 inches and about 1.5 inches deep. So right now I'm just going to be adhering all of those pieces of the ripped music note sheet paper to the canvas with the Mod Podge and covering it to seal it down. And I run my finger over it after I've sealed it down with Mod Podge to get rid of any bubbles. Because typically when you're adhering something with Mod Podge, you want to wait till the bottom is dry, like you adhere the bottom and put it on, and then you wait till it's dry to put a top coat of Mod Podge to seal it to avoid bubbles. That's how you avoid the bubbles. But when you're doing it like a decoupage, similar to like what I'm doing right now, you can just smooth it out with your finger as best you can. You might still get some bubbles, but it kind of adds to the texture, so that's kind of cool. Here I've taken some more gesso and a bit of water, and I'm just whitewashing it just to kind of set it to the background a little bit more. So it's just giving a little bit of a lighter look to it. Making sure I get all my edges. And then I'm going to be taking my heat gun, just heat setting it here, and then I'm going to take the gesso again, and I'm going to be going around the edges of where the torn paper is, and that's going to sort of blend it into the background a little bit more so the edges aren't so contrasting. And then here I'm just taking a baby wipe and wiping just a little bit off of the music notes so they still show. This ends up getting covered up really in the end anyway, but this was sort of my vision at the time, you guys. My vision does change over time. Here I'm testing some Lindy's spray. So I've used the Whale Watch Blue, the Tiffany Blue, and the Frozen Jack Frost, Lindy's Starburst spray. And I've did equal parts of each in just a little container and mixed it up and put it into a mini mister just to mist it onto my project. And here's the Cosmopolitan Pink Starburst spray from Lindy Stamp Gang. All of the sprays I'm using is all Lindy Stamp Gang, you guys. And I'm just gonna between each spray I heat set it so that they don't run into each other and just turn into a big mess. For some looks that looks kind of cool, but for this I really wanted each color to really stand out on its own without it mixing and blending. So I'm heat setting it really good. This one here I'm letting it drip a lot more down vertically. And then this one here I'm going to spray quite heavy so it drips horizontally. So I have 2 different sort of diagonals. There means 2 different angles of the flow, vertical and horizontal. And that was seagrass green I'm using there. And heat setting it again. And here's the mixture I made, the blue that I made. And I didn't want this one to run too much, so I just tipped it a little bit. The heavier you spray it on, the more it puddles, and then when you lift it up, you let gravity do its thing. That's when you'll get more drips. Again, spraying and heat setting, and this is basically what it looks like right now, just showing the different angles of the drips. Here I'm taking the stencils, so one is the mini ledger, one is the chicken wire, the mini chicken wire. They're all the 6x6, the Crafters Workshop stencils, and then the circle one is actually one I got from Saw Crafters in a just in a rack that she sent me for Christmas. And you can, I'm pretty sure she sells those all different types of stencils on her Zibbit store, and I can post that link down below. This is my homemade texture paste, you guys. I do have a tutorial on the recipe that I made for this exact one that I'm using right now. And it's made basically using baby powder, Mod Podge, and gesso. And I'll post that tutorial down below if you haven't already seen it. And I really wanted to try this texture paste, the homemade one, on this project and test it with sprays and see how it works. And I love, 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 love the results. This pretty much gives me the exact results as the Liquitex. So, and fraction of the price because you're making it on your own. And for some people, you may already have all of those ingredients already at home. So the first one I used was the ledger, mini ledger. Now I'm using the chicken wire stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. And because I didn't press it down hard enough, you guys, on the canvas, because, the canvas is kind of, it's not a hard surface. It pushes in a little bit. I had to go over it again right here. So I let the first one dry and I just went over that last one so the texture came up a bit more. And here I'm just doing the polka dot one from Saw. And you can also get like punchinella. If you guys saw in one of my hauls a long time ago, I also ordered some punchinella, which is basically the leftover from the sequin when they make those sequins, those little circles. So you can use punchinella. You can use all different types of things around the house, screens and all different types of things you can find to make fun texture with your texture paste. And I'm basically just putting it randomly all over the place where I like it, and cleaning up the edges a little bit as it sort of comes off the sides. I just kind of wipe it with my finger. And I do clean, for the most part, I clean my stencil usually between each go, so I don't smudge any of the texture paste that's already on it from underneath and mess up my project. And then this heat sets really well too with the heat gun, you guys. I did test that too to see if it would heat set well, and it just speeds up the process, so it really doesn't take very long to dry it all with the heat tool. And here, because I didn't want to lift it up and I was lazy, I'm just doing the side, so you can't quite see exactly what I'm doing, but I'm just adding a little bit more texture paste to the sides of the canvas there. And then I think this is the last little area I wanted to put a little bit of the polka dots just to sort of even out the look of the stenciling. Here's some Prima flowers, and they're basically sprays, and I'm just going to I took those because those aren't really colors I would usually use, so I took those because I'm going to be covering it completely with gesso. Here I'm just showing a quick little sketch that I made, and I'm cutting out just a sort of an idea of how big I want my birdcage to be, so I have an idea where I want to place things. That's all that little paper is. It's just a random thing because I didn't have my birdcage made yet. So here I'm just playing with the placement of things and kind of getting a rough idea where I want things to be placed, and then I'm going to start prepping my embellishments with gesso. Again, just playing around with some ideas that I had in my sketch, figuring out what kind of embellishments I want to incorporate so I know what to prep and prime. So here's where I'm going to be taking my gesso, basically, and covering this entire spray with a few coats of the gesso. Gesso is quite thick. It's a great thing to prime with. So I did that, used a little bit of water also to blend it in, and then now I'm using the Frozen Jack Frost, which is one of my favorite sprays, you guys, the white Lindy's Starburst spray. Love it. So I just sprayed that over just to get into the little cracks and crevices of those sprays. And here I'm just basically doing the edges of those chipboard pieces because they're going to get covered with paper anyway. So this is the paper collection again, the Be Happy by My Mind's Eye. And I'm just pulling out the honeycomb ones because I'm going to do some fussy cutting here, because I'm going to cut them out and then I'm going to be adhering them onto some chipboard to add some dimension to the project. So I decided I'm going to take the caged bird die from the Tim Holtz to use as the general kind of a shape of like a frame sort of the birdcage that I'm going to make. So I just trace it onto my canvas to give me an idea where I want it to be placed, and then now I'm going to be tracing it onto just the outside onto some chipboard. And at first, you guys, this is lightweight chipboard, but I ended up changing, and I lost some footage, but I ended up changing the back of it to heavy or the medium weight chipboard instead of lightweight chipboard. Just so it was a little bit more sturdy when I put it down onto the canvas. But all of the little bars that I do on this birdcage is all lightweight chipboard, and I just recycled it from a packaging. I can't remember of what, but it was just recycled packaging. So basically, I'm just kind of getting an idea of the size of the strips. Here, I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of strips for the bars of the birdcage. And then I'm just taking a 2-inch circle and putting it on there just to kind of close the top so I can have a clean edge to cut and do my fussy cutting. Again, this is the lightweight chipboard, and I end up making this piece here a medium weight chipboard, just so you guys know. I lost the footage of that happening. So right now I'm going to just use this bottom of the Liquitex just as the curvature portion of the bottom of the birdcage. So I have, again, something to cut along. It's nice and clean. And I just kind of wanted it to be like half a birdcage kind of a thing, like it's popping out of the canvas. And here I'm just going to be putting like the main skeleton sort of pieces of the frame of the birdcage on, just so I can lay it down, and then I'm going to prep and prime it all inside with some gesso so it's easier to paint. You could totally paint all these pieces ahead of time. It would be a lot easier, but I was just sort of, again, this was just designing it as I go kind of a thing. I was just sort of, there was no prep work in this in this design idea for this birdcage. It's my first time making one, so I had no idea what I was doing, but it ended up working. So on the back of this one is the medium weight chipboard, you guys. So it's a lot sturdier for the back. And again, I'm just priming it with the gesso, catching the edges that you can see the little bit of the chipboard, and just painting it with the gesso to make it all white. And then I'll heat set that once that's all covered. And then you're going to see me going in with my texture paste. And all of the texture paste, again, that I used in this project was my homemade stuff. So here's the homemade kind, and I'm just going to go over the entire, like all the bars. Basically, that's going to be showing with texture paste. And then after I go with texture paste, I like to take my sponge brush and dab it because it gives this really cool textured look to it, sort of a sponged look. And it kind of gets rid of those peaks because I didn't want a whole lot of the peaks on my birdcage. And here I'm going to take this, the clock die from Tim Holtz, and I think it's Weathered Clock, I think it's called, from Tim Holtz, the Sizzix die. And I just cut it out in medium weight chipboard, and I gessoed it, and now again texturing it with my texture paste and my sponge brush. And here's the Birds of a Feather. This was from, Leemore sent this to me, or was this from, yes, no, this was from Leemore, I think. I think it was the Fab Scraps chipboard design piece. And that bird I ended up cutting it off because it just wasn't really looking like a bird by the time all the texture was on. But anyway, I put the texture paste on it just like I did with the clock that you just saw. Here I'm taking the medium weight chipboard, and I'm putting those little hexagon pieces, little honeycomb pieces that I cut out of the paper line, and I'm just using Mod Podge to adhere them down. And I didn't put Mod Podge over top, you guys. I just put it on the bottom, so I wasn't sealing it at all with Mod Podge because I wanted gesso to stick to it quite easy and it to take on the sprays. And basically, I'm just taking these other chipboard, medium weight chipboard embellishments that I have, and adhering them onto the design paper, and making sure the side that I want showing is up. And with the circles, I knew I was going to do like a banner type of thing with them, so I'm only covering half of some of the circles with the one kind of design, and then you're going to see me take another design right here and then put that on the other half. So then when it's cut, I've already got my two pieces with different designs on it. And then basically here I'm just cutting out all of the chipboard pieces that I adhered the paper to. And then I'm going to go, after I'm cutting it all, I'm going to just take my sander and just sand it down quickly. Here I'm just going to cut out all of the little honeycombs. And again, this is the sanding part, just using my Tim Holtz sander. Nail files work good too, or just plain old sandpaper if you got that, or a sanding block. And here, so what I was trying to do here was just make this a lot darker. So I'm using honeysuckle coral as well as the cosmopolitan pink. And here I'm taking Silent Night silver. And my idea was to make the title a little bit darker so it stood out. So that's basically what I'm doing now. And then I ended up lightening it up quite a bit in the end. And you'll see me doing that because I didn't end up liking it. This is Pumice Stone Tim Holtz Distress Ink. I'm using my homemade blending tool block here to edge that to make it stand out a bit more. And I'm doing the same thing basically with the bird cage using Cosmopolitan Pink, the homemade Lindy Stamp Gang blue mixture that I showed previously in my little spritz bottle. And then I think I add, some Silent Night silver on there just to darken it a little bit. Again, I wanted these pieces to stand out a little bit more. was my idea in my head. Here's the honeysuckle coral. And then I ended up changing a little bit. I lightened it a bit with some gesso, just touching some spots with gesso to see how I like that, and then it will change in the end. Here's some more. Here's some. Actually, this is a rose from Saw Crafters, and then I've also got some iron roses in there, and I'm basically prepping all of the flowers and these metal embellishments with gesso. Sometimes I lay them down on my canvas and gesso them after, but some of the ones that are difficult to get into the cracks and crevices, it's easier just to gesso ahead of time. And I started doing a few, so I thought, I might as well do a bunch. So that's basically what I'm doing right now. Now's the fun part, starting to embellish and figure out where I want things. So I just cut that clock in half and decided I wanted in the corners. That doily you see in the background I don't end up using. It's the Sophia's Heart from Cheery Lynn Design. It's that die, and I don't end up using it. I end up using a different doily. And here I'm taking the hardware findings from Tim Holtz, and I cut 3 of them with medium weight chipboard because I really wanted this like to stand out. And I'm basically gluing them on top of each other to give a lot of depth and dimension to them. So I've basically done that, and then I don't know if I show it on screen or on camera, but I basically gessoed it and textured it just like I did with my other chipboard embellishment, like the clock there and the bird cage. So here again, I'm placing some items on the canvas and figuring out where I want things and doing little clusters. I started out with this top corner. I thought because it was the smaller embellishment cluster, it'd be easier to start with that one and kind of go from there. Now I'm going to start gluing things. So because I have chipboard on top of chipboard and on top of chipboard, I wanted to fill in some of the spaces with some just raw chipboard that you're not even going to see. So right after I do this little banner here, you're going to see me. I'm going to want to put this tag down, but because there's a big gap there, I want it to be raised up and nice and even and level. So I'm putting that piece of chipboard down so it's level with the other piece of chipboard that I put down, if that makes any sense. And here I'm just going to sort of putty in some of the cracks with this texture paste that I made again, just to sort of seal in the cracks that would be shown from the outside. And then just using hot glue. Again, I go a bit in between hot glue, E6000, and glossy accents with adhering things down. I try not to use a whole lot of E6000 because I am pregnant and that stuff is just, oh, the fumes. So wearing a mask, of course, and then having my window open, I was just being really careful with the fumes that the E6000 gives off. So it is stinky, stinky. So here's the E6000. Again, I usually put down all my heavy embellishments, especially metal, non-porous embellishments with E6000 or glossy accents. Glossy accents is fabulous too. I just try to be careful using it because it does show up quite glossy. Unless you do a good coat of gesso to cover up the glossiness, you won't see it. Here again, I'm taking just a strip of chipboard here to add. I'm going to need to add 2 layers because, as you can see, I've got 2 layers of chipboard there with the 2 different tag and the banner. So I needed to lift it up 2 times to get this one to lay flat. And just using hot glue I usually use hot glue for the flowers and for the sprays and chipboard and paper and stuff like that. Some metal pieces I'll put a little bit of hot glue on it in addition to glossy accent or E6000 so that the hot glue sets it in place while the other liquid glue dries, because sometimes it takes a while, but it's nice to have it, stay put in one spot. That one I decided to raise a little bit because of the spray that's there. It kind of raises it up, so I needed to put some chipboard down to raise it up so it kind of laid flat over top of the spray stem. And here's just a bolt that I had that I just gessoed. And I was kind of playing with the idea of putting a hinge there, and I didn't end up liking it, so I didn't put it down. Just putting down some iron roses there. And the great thing about doing the canvas collages when you're just covering everything with gesso is you can just pull out colors of flowers that you don't normally use, that aren't really your color, and just gesso them up, layer them with gesso, and then they become a neutral tone that you can spray over top of. So the flower itself might be beautiful, but you might not like the color, so that's when you can use them on these collages. So you alter it completely anyway. So I put those clock spinners, the clock hands, together with a brad, as you can see on the side of the collage there that I had adhered down. And then now I'm just putting a pen nib. That was a real vintage pen nib. And domino piece there, and the key. I think that's a graphic 45, or no, that's a recollection key, I think. And then a little clothespin, and just some random banner pieces that I cut out with chipboard. And another little I am roses. And I could put a little bottle cap down there too next to that flower I just adhered down. And right now I'm putting glossy accents into it and into the bolt because I'm laying down some beads, just some little pearl beads into that little bottle cap, mini bottle cap, and then a pearl bead into that bolt. And here, this is a chipboard honeycomb piece that I got from Saw. Again, she sells these on her in her exhibit store, and again, I'll have the link down below. I love this stuff. This stuff is awesome. I gessoed it. It's quite thick. It's a nice thick kind of a chipboard, and it's all like laser cut, so it's beautiful, nice clean edges. And I really liked how it looked in this project, and it was perfect for this project with all the honeycomb shapes. So here I'm adhering that doily down with Mod Podge, and then just kind of figuring out where I want that honeycomb to be and where I want the birdcage to be. And I'm just using some Aleene's the tacky glue for this because it's just basically chipboard, like paper going on paper, so it'll hold fine. So I used that there. I did the same with the other, but I think I used a bit of hot glue on the other one to hold this one piece down, like right there, that wasn't wanting to stay down. So, and I think I like the placement of the birdcage, so I'm going to take my hot glue and adhere that down, being quite generous with the hot glue. And I'm just going to take the end of a paintbrush and go inside the birdcage to press it down really nicely, and also putting my hand underneath the canvas to give it something hard to press against. And again, more just playing around with the embellishments and placement. Here I'm taking another bolt that I had gessoed I was going to use as an embellishment, but I'm actually going to use it to raise this Prima resin bird that I have, and I lightly gessoed it as well. And I'm going to lift it up and put it over top of that bolt so it looks like it's flying inside the cage. And I use glossy accent to adhere that down. I had to cut open the top of the birdcage there, as you can see, because I wasn't thinking. Well, I knew I wanted to put a bird in there, but I still closed all the edges knowing I was going to cut an edge anyway. You guys could have put the bird in ahead of time, but I wanted to do the spraying and everything, so I just closed the bird cage with the hot glue. And here I used just some more glue there, and then here's me texturing that hardware finding piece. That was the 3 layers of chipboard. And here I'm just putting some Tim Holtz just brads in there. And I found just a random piece of metal I had in my stash, and I end up cutting off the end of it, and that's going to just be the top part of the birdcage. And I've got the chain, I think it's V Landing I got at Walmart. I really like the look of this chain, and I'm basically going to have the chain coming down from that hardware finding and then hooking around that loop to look like it's a hanging birdcage. And I just put some jump rings in there after I cut off the chain, and I'm going to use the jump ring to loop that little piece I'm going to have dangling from the birdcage. And gessoing it a little bit as I noticed it needed more gessoing. And I'm using hot glue for this chipboard piece. And then I'll use some glossy accents for this metal piece. And then I'm going to take some of my homemade texture paste, and I decided I want to cover up kind of where it's joining so it looks like it's just sort of, it's just attached and it was meant to be part of the birdcage. So I'm just going over with my texture paste there and making it sort of rough looking to go with the rest of the texture of the birdcage. Now I'm going to start gluing down my embellishments down in the bottom corner here. So gluing down the Prima spray with some hot glue. And I think I just sort of edited out a lot of this gluing, you guys. I don't know how much you guys like to see me gluing things down. Give me feedback if you do enjoy watching me glue everything down, or you don't mind how I'm cutting out some of the gluing and you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing and the glue I'm using. Let me know, because if you guys want more of this process, I won't edit it out as much. It's just this video was getting to be really long. It already is really long. So I was trying to edit out as much as I could. So basically just gluing down the flowers with hot glue, and those metal embellishments I'll use E6000 as well as glossy accents. The chipboard embellishments I'll use hot glue. Sometimes the chipboard embellishments that are really tiny, I might use some glossy accents instead, just because the hot glue I'm afraid it will seep out too much. This I used a combination of hot glue to just keep the light bulb in place, and then I used E6000 on the bottom part. And then I'm just using some, that's glossy accents there to just kind of make sure that that gear stays put. And E6000 for this heavy key. This is a Michaels key that you can get from those $1.50 bins. Just figuring out where I want the title to be, and then I'm trying to figure out what type of a piece I wanted here. I ended up using a honeycomb piece underneath that key, and I'm cutting a little piece of that honeycomb out there so that this piece will lie flat, this banner piece will lie flat and sneak underneath the bird cage a bit. Just using a little bit of gesso just to cover up some of the chipboard. And here's just a honeycomb piece that I had extra, and I decided to use that underneath the key. And then I'm just going to use hot glue for this title, just because it was kind of a rough, uneven background because of some of the texturing. So I thought it'd be easiest to just hot glue it because it would stay in place better than using a wetter glue that would take a while to dry. It might shift a little bit, so I just use hot glue for that. There's no rhyme or reason really as to like the glue I choose at the time. It's just whatever I feel is going to hold it the best. Here's the texture paste. I'm basically putting it in and around random areas. Basically, this is where I kind of wanted to close some areas, you know, where the chipboard meets the end, where some embellishments meet the end. I wanted to close some of the little gaps that might be shown. And I'm also covering some of the embellishments to give them a bit of texture, some of the flowers on the leaves and the petals, just to add a little bit more texture. It looks pretty cool when you spray it, and there's just more added texture to the embellishments. And I'm adding a little bit more onto the bird cage there as well. Here I'm using E6000 to adhere down this Prima resin, or no, this was actually a recollection piece, sorry, from Michaels. And I just added a Tim Holtz, the number 7 on there. And just gessoing again, just going over another layer basically. I think I went over some embellishments a few more times with gesso, some of the metal pieces, just to lighten them a tad more. I like the way the pink flower stayed a bit pink, so I didn't add too much more gesso to the pink flower because I liked that pink. It went kind of well with the layout. And here I'm just embellishing some of, I'm gessoing some of the other embellishments in this cluster in the corner. And now I'm starting to spray. So this is Cosmopolitan Pink I started out with, and basically just spraying and heat setting. Honeysuckle Coral here. I usually start out with the lighter color and kind of go darker. And I go back and forth. This is the Sage Green one that I'm using. And then I might decide, oh, I need more pink, and I'll go back and forth. So basically, the color scheme I've been using with the sprays, that was my homemade blue spray I mentioned earlier. All the sprays I've used that I mentioned earlier are the same sprays I'm using now, so nothing different. That was the Silent Night Silver. I wanted to add some darkness to it, and then I think I ended up wanting to go a little bit lighter, so then I ended up, with the gesso and the frozen Jack Frost, that lightened it up a little bit more, so I ended up liking it. But this is basically where all the, I didn't anticipate that I was going to cover up most of the paper and embellishments, the paper embellishments that I made with the paper line, but it just started happening and I just kept going with the flow. So that's where the design idea changed. I didn't have as much of the paper line showing as I wanted, and the music notes in the background didn't show as much as I wanted, but that's okay. That happens. We end up changing the design idea, and I'm going back and forth with the pinks. And now I'm taking some gesso and highlighting some of the embellishments, and you might find you need to go a couple times with gesso because it sort of absorbs in. Even when it's completely dry, I find sometimes the embellishments really absorb that gesso, and it kind of doesn't show as a stark like white that you want it to show. So you might have to go over a few times to highlight, which I ended up doing. And then I decided I wanted more pink, so I added more of the cosmopolitan pink and some honeysuckle coral. And then now I'm adding the frozen Jack Frost. I usually like doing this last if I'm going to add some highlights. And again, I love this stuff. This is a must-have, you guys. When this came out, I was so excited, and I can't stop using it. I have to get more now because I'm almost out. But I'm basically putting it in some random spots, and then I let that dry overnight. And now I'm going to be going in with the final bit of highlighting. And I'm going to skip over a lot of this to you guys because it does take a lot to highlight every little embellishment. I'm changing between a thin brush, like what I'm using now, to highlight very carefully the birds of a feather because I wanted it to pop out a little bit more. It doesn't stand out as much as I wanted it initially, but then I ended up liking how subtle everything kind of was. And I'm highlighting the honeycomb too with a small brush. And I highlight a lot of like almost like the light is coming in coming in from the left and shining in, so you can kind of, that's sort of where I'm getting my highlighting and the blending idea in terms of where I'm highlighting it, I should say. So it's kind of what I'm doing here, and I basically go over all of the embellishments with a little bit of a highlight with the gesso. And again, sometimes if it's not as bright of a white as I wanted it, then I would go over it again after it dried. And you could use white acrylic paint too, if you guys prefer whatever your favorite white paint is. I just use, I really love gesso just because of the thick texture of it. But sometimes I do play around and I go around with white paint, acrylic paint instead. So again, I'm going over some of the other embellishments. And then the final step here is my scintillating silver. I spray it really heavily because I wanted that final shimmer. Scintillating silver is basically no color, just all shimmer. It's gorgeous. And this is the final product. So I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Quite light and shabby, different from my other grungy, dark looking sort of mixed media canvas collages. So I'm excited how it turned out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Again, I'll have the links down below to Lindy Stamp Gang, the store where you can buy those beautiful sprays, as well as Saw Crafters. And the tutorials I mentioned. So anyways, you guys, thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye now.